listening to Angry Geeks Network presentation. A Blair production.
Holy Foley,
Whoa.
Tonight we've got a stand-up kind of guy who is our guest celebrating 20 years of bouncing heads off the wrestling mat and also holds the dubious distinction of being one half of my favorite match in the history of Wrestling Open. Tonight our guest is Dan Barry.
You know what? I'm the town. That was you acted like you just introduced Dan Barry the town. That's not how you do it. That's not how you do it at all. You just said he has a banger of a match, and you were saying it's your favorite Wrestling Open. How many times do I have to tell you when you introduce someone, you have to do it with pizzazz, with flair, okay? You see my name? I am the monarch of moderating, okay? You know how it goes. You have to say, ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, the one, the only, Dan Barry! That's how you do it. Dan, am I correct? That's how you do it?
I mean, you gave a 10-second intro to a 1-second wrestler, so I don't know necessarily that that's needed, but I appreciate it.
Well, yeah, you're quite welcome. See, now I'm appreciated. You're not. Now you can go on with your questions, Jack.
It's nice to be here from the basement of my friend's house, as you can see with the litany of things behind me. I'm obviously not at a studio of sorts, so...
It looks
By the way,
like a
everyone
fun
thinks
spot.
Dan Barry's a fake name. I don't know why that's the case. Everyone tells me Dan Barry's a fake name. And I'm like, why would I pick that boring of a name to be my fake name? I don't know. It's okay.
Yeah, maybe you're like secretly from Connecticut or something, and there's some irony in that. I don't know.
I don't think it's a fake name. I think it's a great name. I mean, not at all. I mean, heck, I think it's fantastic. I'm still sharing.
Quick. People refer to me as literally Dan Barry only. They don't call me Dan. It's always just Dan Barry. So I've only been used to hearing my entire name my entire life. Hello, Eric.
It flows. It flows.
I had a girl date me for 6 months. She only called me Dan Barry. It's a true statement.
Wow.
And that.
Shout out to Jess from Massapequa, New York. Really appreciate you putting in your best time.
Well, we got so much to talk about, Dan. I mean, it's not only wrestling, but I mentioned it in my intro that Lewis tore apart and tried to throw in some Connecticut humor about that. I love Wrestling Open. So I'm psyched that you're there a lot. You're like one of the guys who I can almost always count on seeing. And I really have had such a great time at every show. And my all-time favorite singles match was the night that you and CPA tangled. And it was just from top to bottom, everything about it was exactly what I want in a pro wrestling match. I just thought it was amazing. I was laughing out loud. There were great moves, great exchanges. You guys played off each other. It was just so well thought through. It was like a theater.
When I talked to CPA about that match, the only two things I was trying to talk about were, the only things I said to him were, I only have 2 ideas, and I want these 2 ideas to come in. I want you to go for your 619 deal, and then I just suplex you out of it. And then I want us each to take off shirts to reveal that we each have more shirts on. Because that's his gimmick, so if I kept doing it with him. And that was it. That's all I came up with up until that exact moment. And then it was fun. It was a good time.
Yeah, I mean, it was so great. He is. He's been a guest on here, and he's so great. I just enjoy seeing him at all the live events. Chris Hebert says, "What's up, guys? What's going on, Chris?"
Hey, Chris.
And Marcy says, "Great to see you all. Glad to see Dan Barry. All one word tonight."
See, Dan Barry. Dan Barry.
Yeah,
That's it.
Marcy's in the know. She understands it. But
It's
like
weird
you
when
guys,
people
like,
call you by your full government every time they see you. Hey, Dan Barry.
you could be
So,
called worse. I mean, that's not so bad.
there are a lot of wrestlers who call me Dad also, or Dad Barry. So that's the other version of that.
Okay, I mean that could
It's just
go
I've been
wrong.
wrestling for so long that I think that everyone views me as some sort of a father figure in many ways.
Yeah, well, I mean, we should get into that also. I just wanted to tell you that I liked what you said about how you guys talked about concepts and ideas, but it didn't stop there. I mean, to me, the match was so multi-layered because you guys are in and outside of the ring. Like there was a lot of physicality going on, and the shirts, like tearing the shirts off, were just awesome. The crowd was popping huge. Like I was right in the front, and I almost got squashed by one of the Brick City boys that night too. But I averted that danger and I didn't get hit by anybody flying out of the ring in your match, but just awesome, man. I don't know if I could say my favorite tag match, but speaking of tag teams, you and 50 Cal are an interesting combination, and it's like you've had several tag team partners, and I always think of you as a singles wrestler. Do you have a preference? Like, do you feel like you're more comfortable as a tag guy or a singles wrestler?
So I think with me, it's like I like tag wrestling because there's a lot of psychology that can be brought into a tag match. Like you have four personalities, right? Of those four personalities, two of them are hopefully good teams, and their personalities as a team will shine through, as well as their personalities as individuals. And then there's a lot of storytelling that can be told in the course of a tag match. Um, I think I identify more with tag wrestling. Most of my career has been kind of tag wrestling, or most of the, I guess, the formidable years of my career have been tag wrestling. But I don't know. I just had a match with Alec Price 3 weeks ago or something like that,
Yeah,
and
great match.
it made me really want to do more like serious. I'll put serious in quotes because I'm not a serious person, but like more like aggressive singles matches in there because I feel like um, people generally think of me in like this sort of easy light of like, oh, comedy guy wears Hawaiian shirts or whatever, but it's like, I have a strong professional wrestling fundamental background, and I want to lean into that a little bit. And now that I'm on sort of the back nine of this, uh, I think 22 years, the back nine of the 22 years, I feel like I just want to do whatever I want to do, and to stop worrying about like kind of, what people think I should be doing or whatever.
Yeah, right. And I think that's hard to do sometimes, especially in the culture we're in with all the social media,
Yeah.
et cetera, et cetera. Eric Hunting says, first time I saw Dan Barry was at Blitzkrieg as part of Team Tremendous.
Yep, that's the one that everyone knows me from. Everyone who knows me, because you have the subsector. Yeah, I've a team with Bill Carr as part of Team Tremendous from 2013 to 2021. So I mean, yeah, it's a lengthy stretch of time. The name Team Tremendous actually started probably in like 2004 or 5. So it's been a nice chunk of my careers under that name.
Nice. I mean, yeah, Eric is a fan who just seems to know so much about so many. So he's showing off here. He says versus the closers.
Yeah, who's in the closers? Because I feel like that's like a Blitzkrieg only tag team name. And who is me and Bill team to get? I don't know. I'm not good with it. So there's two things you know about me. I don't remember matches. Well, I remember moments of matches, but I don't remember dates at all. I assume I've been wrestling for 22 years because my mom had to sign a waiver for me to train to be a pro wrestler, which meant I was 17 years old, and I'm 39 now. So I'm gauging it by that. That's like my
Okay.
like real how I know about my pro wrestling career. But
Brad Hollister and Sexy Jesus.
what's that?
The closers. Brad Hollister and Sexy Jesus.
Yeah, I think he got hurt in that match. Sexy Jesus got hurt. He like tore his ACL.
Mm.
Yeah, because I remember like, yeah, okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Bacon and Hammer. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. I want to wrestle Bacon now. I want to see what that would be like because I think it'd be an interesting match now.
I would like to have some bacon. I'm on a diet. I mean,
We'll get turkey bacon, low sodium turkey bacon.
Yeah, man, come on, get it together.
Here's what you gotta do. Ready? I'm from New York, so it's bacon, egg, and cheese, salt, pepper, ketchup on a roll. What you do is you get turkey bacon, egg whites, and mozzarella, salt, pepper, ketchup, and then that way you get the high protein and you get lower calories.
There you go, Lewis. I mean, Dan Barry just laid it out for you.
I know. I got to check with my doctor to see if she'll let me eat it, though.
She will. She will.
Let's
trust in it. But Dan, to continue with what you said, I loved the match with Alec Price. I thought that was awesome. And to me, what you just said about Big Bacon, he falls right into that same category, especially at Wrestling Open. Like, he's always angry. He's looking to crush somebody.
What I liked about the Alec Price match, and I don't know how inside baseball we want to get on this, but I'll get some inside baseball on it, is that Wrestling Open has like a logic, right? Most of the matches are generally fall under about 10 minutes, just the way they're all paced. So generally under 10 minutes. So whenever you hear Rich Palladino making announcements of like 5 minutes till end, 5 minutes elapsed, 10 minutes remaining, whatever. As those announcements get made, people become like accustomed to seeing like a finish or something shortly thereafter because most of the matches tend to be short. So when I wrestled Alec Price, I said to him, I have one idea, and my one idea is for us to hit one false finish right before that 10-minute mark that makes it feel like that's the real finish. We're going to build the entire match around this feeling like this might as well be the finish. And then when it isn't the finish, people are going to be surprised, and we can restart from there. And so if you watch the match at the 10-minute mark, or a little bit after, he hits the surprise kick, and I'm down, and he hits the pinfall, and I kicked out, and that kind of blew the roof off a little bit because it was like, no, we've seen this formula before. And I like the idea of taking wrestling and the rules associated with wrestling and then just slightly changing them to fit like a different narrative or using them against themselves. There's rules in wrestling. And I always say that you learn all of the rules of something so you know when you can break them. And that's the point of pro wrestling. Yeah,
you just stole it right out of my mouth. I was just going to say all great artists, they learn the rules first so they get to break them. And I think that you guys did a great job. And I was on the edge of my seat in that match because I think Alec Price is one of those guys who's just on a different level. There's not a lot of guys like him. And I thought when I saw
he has momentum. Yeah. He has a lot of momentum. And I think that, if you're a Beyond Wrestling fan and you've been a fan of them for a while, my job in Beyond Wrestling for a while was sort of the spoiler, where if somebody had an undefeated streak, in Beyond Wrestling, they always wrestled me, and they would lose their undefeated streak, and that was like a thing that kept occurring in Beyond Wrestling. So the idea is that like I went from being like super straight wrestler to being like comedy joke wrestler to being me and 50 Cal, and it's like, he's like, I'm going after the Beyond Originals. I'm like, well, hold on a second, like I'm a Beyond Original. And so there is also the element of that. And then when I went into Wrestling Open, the thing that I said about Wrestling Open was I'm here to prove that I can still wrestle with everybody. And I want to make that point perfectly clear. And so that match was my like, hey guys, like I'm showing you that this is not like, forget about the finger guns and all the other shit that I do. Like watch the match and tell me that you don't believe what you just saw. So that was my goal. And I hope it worked. To some respect, thank you, Marcy. I'm glad it worked. But that was the idea behind it. Is that idea of like taking the rules that are in effect, taking the cadence that normally occurs. There are some subtle things like, my eyes were closed until my kick out, and then when it was time for the finish, my eyes were closed. They opened for a second and they closed again to signify that I didn't have it in me, and that was it. And so like there's weird little beats in there that are more for me and him. Wrestling can be really fun and you can create really cool moments out of it. And I wanted to create a cool moment out of that. Hopefully I got to do that for some people.
Yeah, I mean, there's no question. I think Marcy's reaction was very similar to mine. Like I was loving that match. And I think oftentimes, maybe more with some of the less experienced wrestlers, and often in the, I guess, dark match or whatever you want to call it, Wrestling Open before they go on IWTV, there's guys having matches, they do moves, there's things happening, but I never really feel like there's a story being told. I don't want to say never. I usually don't feel like there's a story being told. So it it also makes me appreciate it more when a match like yours comes up where you know that that's at the forefront. It's not just like, oh, hey, I'm going to do a dive out of the ring and you're going to move out of the way. There's going to be a whole lot more than that. There's actually a story being told. And like you said, there's beats that if you're paying attention, you're probably catching.
Yeah, and that's exactly what Eric's correct. The little things make the big things mean more. Like when you watch me versus Alec, the first 5 minutes we were still doing chain. Like I'm in no rush. I'm not being paid. But to counteract that, if you watch the match I had with Max Caster, the entire psychology of the match is if I beat him in 10 minutes, I win $10,000. So everything was going for a pin. Everything was going for the finish. I actually think the me and Max Caster match was probably I like that match probably almost as much as the Alec Price match because there's a lot of psychology built into the match that people overlooked because people tend to wrestle. And this is gonna sound negative on pro wrestling in general, but people tend to wrestle for a gif. They don't tend to wrestle for the crowd. And for me, I'm wrestling for the crowd. Like, fuck the camera. I don't care about the camera right now. Like, yes, I'll look at the hard camera and do my fucking pose. But at the end of the day, I want the people who are in attendance to have a good time and to come back next show. That is the extent of what I want to do as far as what I do in the ring. It's meant for the live crowd. So when you have a guy like Jim Cornette coming after and sort of dissecting a wrestling show afterwards, cool. But like you weren't in the room, so you didn't understand what was occurring. You didn't follow the train of thought that was occurring at that point. So for me, in this moment, it was the idea with Max Caster was there is a timeline. I have 10 minutes. I need to get the pinfall in. And then when I don't get the pinfall in or whatever, I don't make the 10 minutes and that's it. With Alec Price, it was, I still got it. I'm still going to fight. I can still do what everyone wants me to do or what everyone thinks I can do. And then use the concept of the match to change, to create the moments that you didn't expect to occur. Use the idea of the 10 minutes to say, this should be the end of the match. But when it isn't, it's like, oh shit, we have more match. And then we go for another 7 minutes. Like, it was a cool, in my head, it was a cool thought process. So
It translates. I mean, I feel like, yeah. I mean, I don't know. Again, I'm kind of shooting in the dark here, but when I see someone like you, who it's obvious there's layers to what you're doing, it makes me wonder. And I don't know how much you want to talk about it or not, but can you talk a little bit about like what maybe prepared you to have this point of view about your performances and your matches? Because I almost feel like I think I mentioned theater earlier. Like,
yeah,
do you have,
I did theater when I was younger. I did theater up until college, basically. Really, for me, like, I'll use stand up as a way to describe this without trying to promote a career. But like, you use the idea of like, there's a beginning, a middle, and an end. Comedy, it's set up, punchline. Your setup could have beats. There could be small punchlines without. But at the end of the day, setup, punchline is the concept behind comedy. If you look at pro wrestling, there is generally a story format that's supposed to occur. And that's the beauty of pro wrestling is that story can be told a billion different ways. My issue is that most of the time the story is ignored in favor of the gift, right? So for me, when I approach a match, I like to think about who am I as a wrestler? And then what can I bring to this match that would make somebody go, only Dan Barry would do that. And that's it. If I can come up with anything to be, that's a Dan Barry thing. And the Dan Barry thing to me isn't like a move or like a sequence. It's the idea of taking an idea that people have ingrained in their head and then taking it away. One of the things I do in my matches is whenever you see someone headlock, tackle, and someone does a drop down, I don't do the drop down. I just take the headlock again because I know this is what you've been trained to do. And I got the idea from fight camps. If you ever watch fight camps or UFC or anything like that, not the headlock spot, but the concept behind with fight camps, the tapes they watch are, here are the sequences this person knows to go for. And then when they're in the fight, they find that sequence, they time the sequence, and then they try and counter it. And there's a lot of really good fights that take place that way. Boxing, UFC, all of it. You wait. Have you ever seen Us?
no.
The movie, Jordan Peele's movie, Us? No, is it us? No, it's the other one.
Them.
It's the yeah, it's the
Mama.
what's
Nope.
it? Anyway, it's the it's the first horror movie he did, which I can't think of the name of. But anyway, there's a fight scene that takes place. It's a jujitsu based fight scene where he goes for a door, the dude puts his foot on it. He goes to the door again, dude puts his foot on it. When he goes to the door again, he knows dude's gonna put his foot on it, so he knows to counter the dude putting his foot on. That's the point of the concept. So that's the logic string that would occur in jiu-jitsu. That's the logic string that would occur in boxing. Why shouldn't it exist in pro wrestling?
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. I mean, so if you're going to do that third clothesline, you might not do the third clothesline that we're so accustomed to seeing.
Right. And it's, I take inspiration from like a Jackie Chan who he would do really cool stuff, but it would always be surprised that he could do it. And it's like, if I can apply that to my wrestling, there's a spot I did in the Max Caster match where I went for a Hurricane Rana and Max punched me in the leg. So I ended up going on one leg and bouncing and then jumping into the Hurricane Rana. That's a trademark Dan Barry Hurricane Rana, but it's a trademark Dan Barry watched Jackie Chan and was like, oh, this is a really cool psychology point to be like, how the fuck am I doing this? And then pull it out. And I think if that's what you get out of watching Dan Barry, it's always like, how am I doing the thing I'm about to do? And why do I always look like I don't know if I can do it? And that's the beauty part of it.
Nice.
You've been in the ring for over 20 years. So this is a new question I like to ask all our guests. So let's go back to the first time you walked out from Gorilla. Curtains open, and you walk out there and you see a sign that says Dan Barry. How did that make you feel?
So, I'll give it this is a pretty good one. I liked Japanese wrestling when I was younger, right? And streamers were a big thing for me. Like you'd see them, whatever. I think the first time I got streamers, I was like, oh my God. Like I had that like weird, like sinking feeling. The other thing is I'm an Irish Catholic or raised Irish Catholic from Long Island, New York. So the feeling of I don't deserve this is pretty prevalent throughout my entire wrestling career. So I feel like if I saw a sign or if I got streamers, like in the forefront, I'm like, this is great. But like internally, I'm like, I don't deserve this. This shouldn't be for me. So, but yeah, no, I love it. I've used the line that I've used it in a promo, and I'll use it again one day. The idea that when I was a kid, all I wanted to be was a pro wrestler. Like that's a pro wrestler. It wasn't about WrestleMania. It wasn't about being on TV. I wanted to be a pro wrestler. And let's just argumentatively say I died tomorrow. My obituary would read Dan Barry Pro Wrestler, and that's all I need. Like that's my life. So I've given my life to wrestling. I give my mind to wrestling. I love this sport. I love this performance art. I love everything about it. So as a result, I hope that translates into what I do.
Oh, it does.
Thank you, Eric.
What was the best advice you were given by one of the boys or a legend? And then part two of that was, what was the best advice you've given to a greenhorn?
The one that everyone always kind of overlooks and a lot of wrestlers hate is keep it simple, stupid. That's like a pretty big one in pro wrestling. Yeah. That's one everyone hates, but realistically should be acknowledged way more than people think it is. People are so worried about like their sequence in a match that at the end of the sequence, you're not actually getting the people watching didn't watch the sequence. And if you think about like, I look at it like comedy. If you open strong and you close strong, people are going to remember those two moments. But if your middle's weak, they're going to feel like the entire thing sucked, even though your opening and closing were strong, right? If you had a shorter set with only your opener and your closer, and both were really strong, people would be like, that was one of the best comedy sets I've ever seen, because you have two strong. So when you think of like your wrestling sequence, if you have a lot of weird transitional points to get to something else, you're probably people are going to feel like the spot wasn't good, but they're going to remember two of the moments in the spot. So don't do that. So simplify it. How can you make it simpler? One of the things that I always was told Mikey Whipwreck was trained at ECW. Mikey Whipwreck was one of my trainers. Mick Foley used to pay when Mick Foley was the person on the card that made the most money. He paid for everything on the travel because he had the most money and everyone else was getting paid shit. And he's like, "This, you should take care of the people below you." And so that concept that you take care of the people below you is what I've lived with. Is there are a lot of wrestlers out there that I think that would give me credit for stopping what I was doing to talk them through what I think they could be doing better. I don't always have the best vocal tone when I say it because sometimes I'm very like, "The fuck you doing?" But the heart is always in the right place. I am who I am, but I promise you that if I'm telling you this, it's not because of this isn't some masturbatory gesture. Like I genuinely want you to be better. So I think that the best advice I think I've ever given people is to study tapes of every form of pro wrestling because that's the most important. One of the things I hate about the concept of the WWE style is that there's a way to do wrestling when that's never been true. There are 100 ways to do pro wrestling. You should learn as much of that as you humanly can and then pick which things you want to do, not do things out of the necessity of this is the only thing I know how to do. And that's the big thing I like to look at pro wrestling. So if you put
Jeet Kune Do.
What's that?
Jeet Kune Do.
That's exactly it. Bruce Lee, take the best of everything, right? So
Correct.
For me, it's if you watch me wrestle, my favorite wrestlers were Dean Malenko, Yuji Nagata, right? Like that's what I'm thinking, and William Regal. So if you have my three, if you watch my matches, you'd be like, you would never assume those are my three favorite. But if you watch moments of what I'm doing, you can tell the things I like about them is that you could put them in the ring with anybody and they'd have a good match. And that's what I was always wanting to do.
Yeah, well, I mean, you're not an easy guy to categorize, and which I love. I think that sometimes people get caught trying to fit into a box that doesn't work for them. And like we had O'Shea Edwards on last week, and he kind of has a style. He's like this big hoss brawler type. But if I was to describe your style, like I'm not really sure how I would do it in a word or two because I feel like it's a conglomeration of many things.
Yeah, I am a sponge. That's what I am. I will pull from everything. If you put me in a ring, I wrestled what's his face? Weber Hatfield. I think he's a different name now.
Yeah.
I wrestled him in Jersey, and I was like, "Oh, let's just do some lucha." And he's like, "You can do lucha?" I'm like, "Yeah, I can do lucha." Like I've learned. I'm no way, shape, or form like a practitioner, but I can do what you need me to do, and I'm there for you. When I wrestled Alec Price, it was like we're gonna wrestle a different style. I did a death match with Bill Carr in New York, and it was like a death match, and it was. The reason is I want to be able to, you guys, anybody to say like I wrestled Slade at Blitzkrieg, and it was a literal fight. It was, yes, it involved pool toys, but it was because that was the name of the match. But like it was a fight. It wasn't like me doing like hokey bullshit to make Slade have to dance around me. Like I wrestled Slade. I wrestle who I have to wrestle. And I think my wrestling style is always like I always think of it as like the counterpoint. So you put me in a match with somebody, I always have something that they do that I have scouted. And I will know when that comes how to get out of it. So that's like what I like to do is be well versed.
Yeah, I mean, and that pays off too because like we talked about the CPA match, but that kind of stuff, like there's a lot of guys who wrestle CPA who don't seem to take advantage of that. And I'm not saying like you said, there's not one way to do it. There's many ways, but it's just interesting how sometimes it feels like those guys are just getting their shit in, doing what they wanted to do for offense, and they aren't taking advantage of what the other person's bringing to the table.
Right. I think that you look at it like, oh, I have 7 minutes to have a wrestling match. And a lot of people will go, okay, what can I do in 7 minutes? And it's like, no, what can we do in 7 minutes? And then how do I make you look as good as humanly possible? Pro wrestling is always about making the other person look good. And both sides to make. If you have a good heel, you can have a great baby. If you have a great baby, you can have a good heel. Like those things can work well for good reasons. And the reasons that they work well are because the two of them are trying to make the other person look good. It's not about MJF getting his insults in or whatever. It's MJF subsequently then getting the shit kicked out of him so that when he gets enough heat, the next person to come along and beat his ass is a huge baby face. So that's the point behind all of that. So if it's done right, it can be simple. And that includes wrestling presentation. if it's done right, it can be done simple. So that's one thing I like about Wrestling Open is it's pretty straightforward. You have matches, they are short. You're here for 2 hours, you go home. Everyone gets the format, everyone understands what's going on, and then as the wrestling show goes on, people have their favorites. People like personalities. I think the people who struggle the most at Wrestling Open are people who do not interact with crowds. If you look at it from comedy, it's like doing a bar show. When you do a bar show, if you just walk up and talk, people are going to hate you. But if you talk to the crowd in a way that like you feel like they're part of it, you know, it'll be better for you at the end of the day.
How do you feel about this philosophy? Jake Roberts once said that you pick one person in the crowd. You zone in on that one person. You make them believe. You make them mark out. Let their energy feed off the rest of the crowd. You got that crowd.
Yeah, that's a theory that I believe in wholeheartedly. Even before my matches, when I'm stretching, I'll talk shit. I'll say like one-liners that I think are funny. I'll talk like if I'm talking to the referee, I'm really talking to one person who's in front of me to get their attention because it tends to radiate outwards.
Correct.
That's the goal is you try and get it to radiate outwards. If I'm selling, I'm on my way up on the ropes. If there's somebody right here, I'll say things like, where am I? Hold on, where is he? What's going on? I'll talk to myself because that means that this person's like, oh, like this is really occurring. But even when I'm wrestling Alec Price, when I hit him with, I do the fallaway slam moonsault, I pin him and he doesn't go down. When I'm coming up to him to then come to blows, I'm saying, why didn't you just stay down? Why didn't you just stay down? Why didn't you just stay down? And the point is that like one person could be like, he's asking, like he's talking to him. Like, this is interesting. Like, it's not like what you would expect to be happening in that moment. I try to make it feel like it's its own thing. And, you know, sometimes I hit, sometimes I miss. I'm not going to pretend like I'm some wise sage of pro wrestling, but I have ideas and I apply those ideas. And if they work, they work. Sometimes they miss. But I do my best to try and be outside the box. And that's
Well, I tell you what, sitting here listening to you talk, it's very enlightening. I spoke to many people doing what I do. I'm gonna. I don't mean a name drop because, dude, I'm sitting here very quiet, just sitting here listening. Jack, stop it. Another legend that I work with, he told me that back in the days, in the 70s, 80s, they used to walk out and to get the crowd going. They used to actually pick a guy in the crowd and laugh at their shoes. And that used to make people, they used to get the crowd going. Have you ever heard of that philosophy?
Well, yeah, but it's still that same picking on one person, right? It's that same idea.
Exactly. Exactly.
If I pick on you, right? Like, let's look at like whatever. If I'm a heel and I pick on one person because they were loud, other people are gonna kind of want to get in on that, and then they're gonna want to, you know what I mean? And then subsequently, if you're a babyface and you're high-fiving a fan, somebody else gonna want to high-five, and you're gonna have like this whole string. So your goal is to like kind of like you're doing the wave in a theater, right? In a baseball game, right? Everyone's slowly doing it, and eventually everyone's taking part. Even though I hate the wave, but like I have a theory of how I hate it. But you know, there's still that idea of like you're trying to get everybody, and you don't just get everybody by being like massive to everybody. It starts small and it gets big, right? When when obviously Hulk Hogan WrestleMania 3, everyone loves Hulk Hogan, but like when he first started being Hulk Hogan, it's like high fives and whatever, and he's working his way up, right? Like there's a start point and end point. People tend to see the end point and go like, oh, that's all it is. And it's like, well, not really. There's about 50 million steps you skip to get there. So like, you know, start walking.
All right, we're gonna take less than 30 seconds for a show's sponsor. Blood, Sweat, and Tears Wrestling is returning to Bridgeport, Connecticut on November 18th. Lucas Chase will be defending his championship against JD Drake on the road to success. Make sure you guys go out there, buy tickets, tell them the Angry Geeks and the Faces and Heels podcast sent you. Sponsored by Alternate Universe LLC, Milford and New Haven. They just announced more matches, and we're going to be talking about those matches next week right here on the Angry Geeks Podcast Network and on Faces and Heels. So once again, the Blood, Sweat, and Tears Road to Success. Lucas Chase versus J.D. Drake.
Brick City Boys.
And Breck City Boy is going to be there. Oh, the matches that Kevin from Blood, Sweat, and Tears has just told me about, amazing.
Awesome.
And our good friend Vita Von Star coming back, and we're going to be talking to some of these cats pretty soon too. So,
Yes, sir. Well, I kind of wanted to get back to mentioning Wrestling Open as kind of a segue because you've wrestled all over the world. It's not like you're just a Northeast guy, So if you're going to a company open, you just described what that show is like, what that company is like. You kind of know the crowd. You have a general idea of what you're going to get for a reaction, I would imagine, most of the time. But if you're going to a company like in Ireland or in Texas or someplace that maybe you haven't got as clear an idea about what you're going to be facing, is there anything that you feel like you have to switch up, or do you feel like you said you kind of just go in, put your ideas out there and see what happens?
I feel like a lot of wrestlers are afraid to reintroduce themselves, if that makes sense. So like when you walk into a room, I'll look at Team Tremendous, me and Bill, okay? Bill and I, when we were starting, we had like one company we were in routinely, and then it became 2 companies, it became 3 companies, it became 4 companies. The biggest thing about our, I'll say, shtick was that if you didn't know what the gimmick was, you didn't know who we were, we had to introduce it to you very quickly. So there was a thought process behind it, and it was, I'm gonna out wrestle, I'm gonna get Bill in, he's gonna hit you twice. Those 2 shots are gonna be the most important, loud, annoying, painful shots of your entire life. So that when I come back in and now I'm taking heat, everyone knows if I tag Bill in, shit's about to go down. So if you go back and you watch most of our first matches at companies, it was the concept of, we did things like the interrogation spot in the corner to get personalities over. We'd sometimes let Bill be drunk, and Bill was a drunk cop, and that was the concept behind Bill. But there was there was a formula, and the formula was Dan's the fancy wrestler. When Bill comes in, it's just power, pain, and like, oh shit, we gotta get away from this guy. So now when I come back and I start getting heat, I tag in Bill, that hot tag, and once that hot tag occurred, people were up because it was like, oh, here he fucking comes. And what Bill did is he just ran over people. And that's what we had him do. Every now and then he'd bust out like a really cool move. But again, he'd hit like a hurricanrana, and then he'd just stand there and wait. And that's it. Let the crowd respond to it. And then when the crowd response started to go down, we go to the next thing. We didn't just like walk in with it. Hey, Joe, how are you? We didn't just go in with those things. We waited, we built it, we let it sit, and we let it marinate. And now that it marinated, we can do the next piece of business. Wrestlers, I say to Wrestling Open all the time, like, don't come in here assuming that like this crowd even remembers who you are. Most of them are new, because Wrestling Open has like a cycle of wrestling fans, right? It's people drinking in the neighborhood who suddenly pop in. It's people who are in town for something else. You'll get like this sort of, motley crew of pro wrestlers. And then once pro wrestling fans, and then once they're there, you have to go in and like, they'll come along with people who are cheering for you or booing for you, but like they're not going to get you right away. And you have to kind of like establish who you are all over again. So that's the thing about pro wrestling, like especially like in the independent level, is like you can't walk into a building assuming everyone knows who you are. You just can't. I'm not on TV. I'm just a dude making a living. And so for me, it's like, I have to get my shit over quick. And as soon as I get my shit over quick, you either like me or you don't like me, and then we'll go from there. So.
Right. Well, it seems like a lot of people do like you. It's really funny because just this evening when I was posting, I think it was on the story on Instagram that you were going to be the guest tonight, one of the people who liked you was Pro Wrestling Grind. And I was going to ask you if there were any companies that you'd like to work for that you haven't yet. And I know there's a really long list, but just as a selfish moment, since I have you here, I just want to say, I would love to see you at Pro Wrestling Grind and Blood, Sweat, and Tears. Are there any companies?
I was just gonna say that after we Not just because we're partners and sponsors with them,
Yeah.
and I just had to play their ad, but I was like, Dan, has Kevin reached out to you yet? I mean, come on.
Honestly, if I'm not working there, it's because they haven't reached out to me or I've been booked. Pro Wrestling Grind
Okay.
and Blood, Sweat, and Tears have not reached out to me. But that's just, it's wrestling business, right? Like it's I'm either going to work for them or not. It's never out of like maliciousness. It's never out of that. It's always just based on like, do they need someone like me? Do they not need someone like me? That's kind of all. I'd love to do. My thing is I just want to work young, fun talent. I want to work people who like wrestling. I also want to wrestle Alex Shelley, Crowbar, Josh Barnett,
Wow.
and Jade Christ for a couple of reasons. Thanks, Joe. All very different reasons. Just I have my own reasons. Alex Shelley is someone that he and I have kind of known each other since like 2002 or 3, and we were on a show called the Jersey J Cup together. It was like me, him. I think CM Punk was on it. Yeah, it's a laundry list of who's who, and then like who's that, and it's just me. Like I'm like the outlier. But Alex Shelley and Chris Hero have told me numerous times they've watched that show numerous times, and like they were both talking about it. And Alex Shelley is somebody that I've always wanted to wrestle, and apparently he always wanted to wrestle me. So like, I'd love that for that to happen. Josh Barnett. The story behind that goes we were in Buffalo, and he saw me in. Yeah, I would love Barnett and Bloodsport because no one would fucking expect me to do it, and that's the point. And I talked to Josh about this a little bit. And he's like, yeah, it's much more serious. I'm like, I know. I would show up in a Hawaiian shirt and shorts. Like, I would show up as who I am, and then you'd have to, like, that would be part of the story. Is like, am I disrespecting Bloodsport? Am I being real to myself? So, but he and I rolled around with each other in Buffalo once. And he's like, oh, you actually know how to do this? I'm like, yeah. Like, I am a wrestler. Like, I'm a wrestler first. I'm not just like but, his first time seeing me was PWG DDT 4. And he saw the finger gun spot and the, that thing. Crowbar, Devin Storm, Jersey indie wrestling legend, WCW. I always had like this weird affinity for Crowbar. I wouldn't say weird because he was good. He was just one of those people that like people always tended to overlook. But he's like in like a Northeast wrestling legend in ways. And so I can't wrestle Reckless Youth. So I got to wrestle Devin Storm. So I want Devin Storm, and I want him. I made the pitch. Like, I want this match. I don't care how I get it. I got to make it happen. So I have a couple of these. So that's where I'm at. But,
that's awesome because it makes me think about Matt Cardona and GCW. You showing up in Bloodsport would give, like, to me would be similar, where it's like, whoa, does this guy belong here?
Yeah,
and
what
then,
the fuck is he doing here? And then my thing was, I told Barnett and I talked about it. It's like, he's like, you just can't. He's like, I'm a fighter. He's like, if you put your hands down, I'm taking the shot. And I'm like, don't worry, buddy. Like, I'm not. We're going in. Like, it's gonna be a good one. So I want these to happen, and hopefully one day my life will be lucky enough that I get something like that. But until that moment, if you hear background noise, I'm sorry. I am at my friend's house having a party game night. So
yeah, right on.
What are they playing?
So this is gonna. I'm losing any cool factor I had in this moment.
Dude, look at my background. Come on. No.
Yeah, so we're
what are they playing?
We're playing Dungeons and Dragons, and
look at my background.
I see. I didn't think you were cool.
Oh, and your mic is muted. Wow. Wow.
This isn't funny at all.
Wow.
You set up, punchline. Comedy is very simple.
I'll pretend I didn't hear that.
Wow.
So, no,
I was behaving all night because I was enjoying this conversation.
We have like 15 minutes left. Now we have to fuck around.
Wow.
Yeah,
hey, congratulations. Somebody famous now hates you.
Wow.
When I was younger, in my wrestling early years, I boarded. I like drugs, and I stopped doing them. And when I stopped doing drugs, it was like, what am I going to do in its place? and it was like, oh, I can do this because the people who are doing this are not doing the drugs that I was doing. So that was kind of the point. Is at that point I started doing that. So now whenever I'm in town, or if I have like a couple weeks where I'm actually not on the road, which is not very often for me, it's nice to be able to like come here on a Tuesday and game and have fun and relax. So
Nice. Well, speaking of comedy and drugs, one of my favorite comedians, and I'm wondering how you feel about him because I know there's a lot of people who have different schools of thought. Bill Hicks. He talked a lot about taking drugs and
Long Island guy.
yeah, right. He is. Yeah, he was. He was.
I think he went to my high school actually.
Is that right? Oh my
God.
God.
Bill Hicks is a phenomenal comedian. He had. I always believe that the best comedians have authenticity to their voice. So when they're telling you something, you're not kind of like, oh, it's a bullshit joke. This person is authentic to what they're saying, and you believe everything they're saying. There's a reason I like Bill Burr. Bill Burr is authentic to what he says.
Yeah.
You think he's crazy, but you can imagine him punching muffins at a farmer's market. Like these are things that you can think of and be like, yeah, he would definitely do that. I think Bill Hicks was the same in that respect. There's a lot of great comedians out there. Gary Goldman is somebody that I think should be noticed more. He's hilarious. There's a lot of one of my friends, the guy Sean Donnelly, is a hilarious comedian. He's very like a phenomenal off the cuff comedian. Comedy's great, and it's one of those things where it's like, you ever want to have a good night, just go to a comedy club. Good or bad show, you'll have a good night. It doesn't really matter, But I would say Gary Goldman is my favorite stupid bit. I'm gonna butcher it a little bit, but I'm gonna tell it. But it's kids nowadays have it so easy. When I was a kid and I wanted to masturbate, all I had to do was wait for the Macy's catalog to come and masturbate to the Macy's catalog. Now, kids, all they have to do is go online and go to like Macy's.com, and it's such a good joke. It's so good and so dumb, but it's so good.
It makes sense, though. It makes sense. I remember finding a Macy's catalog in my father's office, thinking like, "What's this doing here? Like, he's not looking for shoes. Like, I don't get it." But I put the pieces together down the road. But speaking of comedy, maybe we can. I don't know how much you want to talk about it, but we talk a lot about the similarities between the world of comic books and pro wrestling. Is just that there's a lot about how kind of working your way up and how some of the dynamics work. And the world of comedy seems like another world that I don't know much about except just enjoying. And I'm just wondering, like, can you tell us a little bit about like how did you break into that world?
So, first off, comedy and pro wrestling are parallel lines. They're the exact same. Every piece of bullshit that you get coming into wrestling, you get coming into comedy, vice versa. So, like, my first comedy show I ever did, I was in the green room, and I was in the green room, and for the first 2 minutes, I was like, "Oh, you are this guy, you are this guy, you are this guy." Like I could identify the personalities as I walked in the room, and it makes me realize, like I've said this before, but like no matter what you do in your life or in work, the drama doesn't change, only the scenery does. It's always the same bullshit. No matter what you do, it's the same bullshit. What got me into comedy, I always wanted to do comedy, but like when you start wrestling, like wrestling monopolizes your life, and I kind of gave up a lot of my younger years to like drinking and drugs and whatever, and I didn't really like spend as much time in pro wrestling as I should have. And I always been told what I can and can't do, and I realized I don't subscribe to that. I do whatever the fuck I want. And when I was a television producer for a little bit, I'm not anymore, but I was a television producer for a little bit. And I was working on a show, and there's a comedian named Tom Papa. And Tom Papa we were talking. He goes, "Are you a comedian?" I was like, "No." And he goes, "You have the cadence of a comedian." And I talked to him. I was like, "I always wanted to be a comedian." He goes, "You should try it. Do it on mic. See what happens." And I said, "All right." And that was 11 years ago. So 11 years ago, I started doing comedy on the offhanded advice from Tom Papa. So thanks, Tom Papa. I appreciate the hard work and effort. But, yeah.
So is it similar to the world of wrestling? Again, I feel like there's a million ways to do it, but like when I don't even know, like, do you have like like the equivalent of a sizzle reel that you send to companies? Like, how does it work in comedy? Like, it's such a big world, I would imagine. Like, how do you get people's attention in order to book you?
Word of mouth. It's a lot of the same. It's a lot of the same networking and self promotion and getting the bookings and getting your time out there. And then the other part of it is this different part is that you're on your own. In wrestling, I have a dance partner, and my dance partner and I are going to do what we can. And at some points, if I'm lost, they'll come in with an idea or whatever. When you're a comedian and you're given 15 minutes or 30 minutes or 45 minutes or 6 minutes, and you're doing poorly, you are on your own for all of those minutes. And people always say, like, in comedy, it's really easy to do your time when people like you. It's really hard to do it when everyone hates you, because you get paid for your 30, your 45, your 20, your 15. It doesn't matter. You're doing that time, and that's it. So that's a lot of it. And it's not that I'm saying like all I do is bomb, but like you go up, you eat shit, you do well. You know, there's a mishmash. You know, you have good crowds, bad crowds. It is what it is. But yeah, there's a lot that overlap, and there's a lot I learned from pro wrestling I brought into comedy, and then subsequently a lot from comedy I brought into pro wrestling.
Do a lot of comedians or even like people in the audience know that you're a pro wrestler?
No, I don't reference it at all.
Oh, okay.
Comedians might know because I'm like, my social media is my social media. I just post what I do. On stage, if you had never met me before, you would not know I'm a pro wrestler. I don't talk about it because to me, it's like I want them separate. I want to have my comedy be my comedy and my wrestling be my wrestling. I've done shows. I did a couple of shows, comedy shows in Ireland where I told wrestling stories because people were there to see the pro wrestler Dan Barry tell jokes. So I told wrestling stories, but really it was like probably 90% me doing comedy and then 10% wrestling stories. So
nice. I alluded to it in my intro that Lewis hated, but Mick Foley, can you talk a little bit about some of your dealings with him? Because you did have some TV time.
I did. Mick was friends with my trainer, but Mikey, Long Island guy. 2000, I want to say 2006. Mick had a pilot for A&E. So it was his comeback to pro wrestling. He was gonna film his like come back to pro wrestling. And what happened was he went to a show I was on, and the footage they used is him looking through a curtain at me wrestling. And he didn't know who I was, but that day he goes, he's like, "Hey pal, yeah, they're pretty good. You can, you available tomorrow or something? We're gonna film, like whatever." So I came and I filmed, and we did a sequence in the ring together, and we got along. And I would see him on and off throughout, and he remembered me, and I never understood how he remembered me, but he remembered me. Fast forward a couple of years later, he's talking to me about he's going to start doing stand-up. I'm like, oh, I do stand-up. And we started having that conversation. And then the only reason I started getting paid gigs in comedy is because Mick asked for me to be his opener, which was beyond what it should have been. He didn't have to do that for me. So that was him helping me out in comedy. I would then see him throughout the times we'd have shows together. And then he, in 2015 or 16, I don't remember which one it was. Probably 2015. 2016. 2016, I quit my job. I was a television producer, and I fucking walked one day. And I was like, I'm not doing this anymore. I'm not happy. I'd rather make no money than do what I'm doing right now. And I had like a whole mental breakdown about it. And that summer, I went from making really good money to making like $20,000 a year. And I was like struggling bad. And I saw Mick was going to be in town. I walked up to Mick at a wrestling school, and he goes, "Oh, Dan can train Noel." And I was like, "I'm fucking sorry, what?" And it turned out that they were prepping for the pilot for Holy Foley, and I walked into a room when he was talking about it, and he goes, "Oh, Dan can do it." And so I got booked in the pilot episode of Holy Foley. The executive producer of the show was like, "I like Dan. Let's bring him in for episode 1." Episode 1 gets sent up. And now here's a fun story that Mick Foley told me, so I'm going to believe him as much as I humanly can. The footage of episode 1 got sent to Vince McMahon's office, and Vince McMahon said, "I want 2 things. I want more of Mick Foley's dog because it just shits everywhere and doesn't listen to anybody, and I want more of Dan Barry because he just shits everywhere and doesn't listen to anybody." And I think that's. But apparently the reason that Dan Barry was on 8 episodes of Holy Foley is because somehow Vince McMahon was like, "I like Dan Barry." So I don't know if that's a glowing endorsement anymore, but it was an endorsement at the time, and I'll take it.
That's good shit. That's good shit.
Oh yeah, he's great.
That's so awesome.
There was a great episode. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, but there's a great episode where we're following. We're following Noel and Frank the Clown around, and we're talking. And basically on the radio, they're like, "Hey guys, just like keep making fun of Frank the Clown," and that's what I did. So for 45 minutes, there is footage of me just roasting Frank the Clown like nonstop with just these lines that just keep coming out. It's me and Mick like laughing and crying in the car, and they got rid of almost all of it because they're like, "Yeah, it's great, but like that line about him looking like half a pedophile and half a clown, that's not that's not a great joke, Dan." And I'm like, "Well, you told me to roast him, so the comedian's gonna roast him."
Are you a pedophile?
Yeah.
I mean, in 45 minutes, they're not all going to be bullseyes.
No, you say a bunch of jokes. That's all I did. And he and I are laughing because it's so stupid how long we were doing them for. We're just driving around in this old Chevy van, but it was a good time.
That's phenomenal. I'm not going to get to all the questions I wanted to ask you because we've only got a few minutes left, but I didn't want to shortchange you on time to promote anything you got coming up, whether it's pro wrestling, comedy. I'm going to quickly say that I don't know if you can say anything yet because Jeremy hasn't told me, but I'm hoping we're going to see you at least one of the nights of Limitless versus Blitzkrieg next month.
I can confirm I'm on the Saturday show.
Nice.
It's as much as I am able to talk about now. I'm not on the Friday show. I think they're gonna announce that card soon, but the Saturday show I'm definitely on. I'll talk about a bunch of shows that have coming up. I have this weekend. I have Victory Pro Wrestling in Long Island, New York, followed by MYWC Wrestling in Long Island, New York. Sunday I have Beyond Wrestling's Bish at the Beach, BISH at the Beach, with me and 50 Cal against Teddy Goods and Lil Mean Kathleen. And then
all fucking day.
I have to look at the rest of my calendar, but you can follow me on social media at the Dan Barry, at the Dan Barry on Twitter, at the Dan Barry on Instagram. I have a TikTok. I don't use it, but there's a TikTok out there. So do whatever you guys want to do. Follow me where you can. Share my shit. That's all I care about. And everyone should be out there having fun. That's the biggest concern I have in life.
Yeah, well, I mean, your livelihood certainly expresses that concern, right? I mean, like, what more can you be doing to endorse that philosophy than be a professional wrestler and a comedian?
To me, it's about living your best life, right? Like, you only get one shot at this. Stop worrying about, I should be doing this now, I should be doing that. You should be enjoying yourself, because at the end of the day, you're going to be dead, and we're all going to die. And so stop worrying about, like, if I don't do this by this time, then what? It's like, enjoy your life. Do what makes you happy. Don't worry about, like, I have deadlines and goals. And, I had someone call me Peter Pan once because all I do is, like, chase dreams and it's like, yeah, but, like, who else is going to chase my dreams? Somebody else, you know what I mean? Like, this is what I'm here for. Also, shout out to Stoked Athletics. Oh, it's over here. There we are. Shout out to Stoked Athletics, Long Island, New York. They have a great program for people who want to get great conditioning, squared circle strength. Go ahead and look it up. They have helped me lose 50 pounds. I went from not being able to touch my toes to being able to deadlift 405 pounds. Like, it's legit. It's changed my life. I can't say enough nice things about this guy. So
where are they on Long Island? Where on Long Island?
On West Islip, New York. They're a great building. StokedAthletics.com. You can find them online. It's a great gym. A lot of guys go there. Max Caster, Bryce Donovan, VSK, Brian Myers, half of the Creative Pro Wrestling Academy, Rex Lawless, a bunch of really cool dudes there.
Yeah.
So definitely give it a check out. We have Alley Cat. Alley Cat's in the gym now, so make sure you can just see what's going on there. But
nice. That's awesome. Well, Dan, thank you so much for being with us. If you don't mind, we're not going to monopolize more time, but if you can hang for a moment after we're finished, just like to say goodbye to you. But quickly, just wanted to let people know next week we have Main Event on as the guests, and those guys are awesome. Like one of the tag teams who I feel like has got tons of momentum going right now. So that's going to be really fun. And if you're looking to support any of the visual arts, you can go to Patreon and search Jack Purcell. I'll pop up. There's some wrestling art, some comic book art. You see Batman and VSK and a whole bunch of other things. I'm doing a piece with 10 different wrestlers for the Limitless versus Blitzkrieg print for Blitzkrieg Pro next month. So you can see progress shots of that. You can find me at Jack Purcell Inc. on Facebook and on Instagram. Faces and Heels podcast is also on TikTok, but we're not dancing. I'm not really sure what I'm doing. I'm trying to make something work over there. And then this guy over here.
You can find me each and every Monday night on the Angry Geek Show with Quinderella as we are live bringing you the best in independent comic book writers, pro comic book writers like this cat right over here, movie stars, actors, directors, anything you can for all your pop culture needs. And you can find us on Roku on the Pod TV network. You can find us on Amazon Fire Stick on the Pod TV network. You can find a podcast version for those on the go on everywhere your podcast needs are found on the Angry Geek Show network. I'm Louis Perry. That is the one and only ink slinging Jack Purcell. Plus, you can find me on the Mayhem Show every Friday night, but I'm surprised I'm not fired yet. So just tune in and watch. That's Dan Barry. Follow him. See him. He is a great cat. He actually kept me in check tonight because I had a great conversation. Anyway, we'll see you guys next week for more wrestling talk. See ya.
You have been watching The Angry Geek Show on Pod TV. Visit our website today. And for guest bookings, email us at theangrygeekshow@gmail.com today.